so we can get started. So this is the March 2022 meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission, and first we're going to go over approval of last month's meetings minutes.
Just a reminder, only those that were in attendance can vote on those.
Okay.
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
I second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay.
So just for the record, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those that were in attendance at last meeting. So it's 5-0 with 3 abstentions. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so are there any visitor comments at this time?
Let's see. We have no visitors who are here for something that's not on the agenda.
We don't have any public hearings this month. So let's move on to new business. We do have 2 demolition requests on this month's agenda. One of them being 713 Hurst Green Road, which obviously has been on past agendas.
So you all should have in your packets additional information that's been found. And I did put on the slides, again, kind of this time frame of information based on some of the newspaper articles and other things. So I'll let you all discuss how you want to proceed.
So even I'm curious how we're doing this, even though the same person isn't.
Yeah, you're right. This isn't, it's an unusual situation because for those that hadn't heard, sorry, a couple people had asked me this question. The original requesters, people who had requested for the demolition, who had a contract on the property to demolish it, no longer have a contract on the property. The family members of the property owners would like it to continue to proceed one way or the other so that they have a determination, because the house is going on the market or has gone on the market. Our understanding is that there is someone who has a contract on it now that does not intend to demolish it. However, that's not a guarantee. So they'd like to just finish this piece out because it's already started its timeline. And there is a timeline to it. So they would like to know either that it's moving forward as a potential for a historic designation, or that you all have done all of your research, don't plan to do any more research, and are fine if someone comes forward and says, let's demolish.
So I know you, Laura, had mentioned if we want to historically designate it as an individual landmark. I know at the last meeting, we had kind of discussed the other property that was like a sister property. And I read through, which I need to do, because I was getting a little confused with the addresses. Was the sister property, the house that's identical to that, on the Century Homes?
The sister property is on the Century Home list, but this property
one is
is not. Correct. So let's see. I put it in the notes.
I'm trying to remember.
725 per screen is identified on the Century Home list as being built in 1898, not 1899 according to county records. It's shown as being built for Amos B. Thornton, which we think is a relation to the GQ Thornton, but we didn't do any additional research on that. The Historical Society at this time had not been able to give any additional documentation to us on it. So the neighboring house at 725 per screen is on the Century list, but 713 is not.
Okay. So I know we kind of discussed last month's meeting that if we wanted to historically designate, we were talking about trying to possibly do both of those properties since they were sister. And I think we kind of mentioned maybe sending a letter to the 725 per screen. How would we proceed if we want to pursue doing that? Since you said that like our timeline is going right now.
You all would need to have a vote that say you want to pursue moving forward with historic designation. I mean, that's really the way it would have to go. Other people other than city staff would have to do this research. We do not, as staff, have the time to do this research. So it would be the Historic Preservation Commission would need to take on this project as doing the additional research needed to start that process. Staff will create the reports, take it to the meeting. We would start with a hearing here. It would go to a hearing at City Council, and it could be designated as a local landmark is what it would be designated as, or a pair of local landmarks. But at this time, city staff cannot do the research for this.
Now, if the occupants at 724 would be interested in doing that, is that something that's?
Sorry, you mean 720 or 5?
Yes, 725.
Yes, but I mean, timeline of getting them to do it has to happen in a very, very timely manner. This can't be something that drags on for months and months and months. If it's gonna happen, it has to happen. All the paperwork needs to go through. We have a very specific timeline that we have to meet in order to move it forward to council for that designation. We don't have the ability to be like, oh, well, are you interested? And is this going? It has to be, I mean, yes, if they want to be involved in it, that's great. And we can send a letter, but they're not required to be involved and relying on them for the designation. So many times, I know we had one other house that had gone through, they never came in for a demolition request, but they were pretty, it was a pretty rough house. Did a major renovation, and then the owners, once they finished renovating it, came forward and got it designated locally. And they did all the research on it and they did the other things, and then we helped them move it through the process. That is an opportunity as another option that it could be designated after, but it's not going to stop it if someone else comes through and says, nope, it can't be saved, I need to demolish it. Because it will have already gone through this process. There's a certain time frame for that.
So I did do a little looking on Ancestry, and I didn't really find much for this property. What I found was for the property on the other side, not 725, and with the Thornton, with George and Alice Thornton, and it looks as though they are the ones who named it Hearst Green. From what I could tell in their family Bible, they refer to their children being, apparently, it's what one person wrote in there, children born at Hearst Green. And they use two words like it is in Sussex in England, which is where George Thornton's mother was from, a town very near Hearst Green. So I don't know if that's where they got the, the connection, and that's why they called their home Hearst Green. But it was, so I would guess, you could just kind of guess that they built these homes, but that's a guess. There'd have to be more research looked into to find out. It didn't seem to me like there was anything, even though they were kind of, they did things in the community and so forth. They were good citizens and all that, but I didn't find anything sort of outstanding. I don't know if anybody else looked into it at all. Sorry about that. But yeah, I didn't find anything. I guess I found outstanding though. And I guess from my experience of working with this sort of thing, they would all need to be, in a way, to designate a district would be kind of makes sense as far as the construction time of her screen. It's a little separate from the houses that were built in the 30s, but I don't know if that even really holds together great. You know, like, is there enough history or whatnot? I'm not sure.
You want to have any other questions about this property or any of the research that was found so far? I mean, just through my digging, I feel like more historic information about the Lovejoy family or person. And it, obviously they were the original landowners, but I didn't find anything specifically relating to the area where this house currently sits.
Right. It seems like it was all purchased from them and subdivided. So it was kind of, they didn't really, this house isn't their house. So it's, or wasn't. It doesn't seem like it was, but you know, I guess I couldn't say for absolute certain, but it didn't seem like it was from finding the other people in. And it's just,
And the only other thing to think about is just this area was not part of Webster Groves originally. And this tract of land that came from the Lovejoys and then was purchased by the Thorntons was a pretty extensive piece. And that extensive piece then became Old Westbury, like they sold all the land to the group that created the Old Westbury subdivision. But that's really stretching it on the overall out of just a single house or a pair of houses, because you can't, I looked as much as I could and trying to tie in, is this Thornton family, the Thornton family that is related to, or, ties to the street name in Webster? I don't know. There was a lot that needed much further digging.
it doesn't really look like that. I know there was something that they refer to that as their country home and whatever, but the Thorntons did. But it didn't seem like it was a large piece of property, but not necessarily that extravagant. And I don't know. I guess I feel like it's a little, here in Webster, we have to compare it to everything else as well, right? And I don't know, maybe there was a reason that something was named. So George Thornton did live to be 100 years old, and there was a story about him with his life insurance, which was kind of funny, but it wasn't, they didn't say anything else about him. They said a little bit about him, but it seems like had he been a really prominent person, they might have mentioned that. So, just seems like a stretch.
So I guess part of deciding factors are whether to continue this on to nominate it as an individual landmark or to not, right? I mean, the demolition request is, as of now, no longer, like you said, it could come up again, but
Well, it can't really, You have to make a decision one way or the other.
Right.
You can't just say, well, because they're no longer having a contract on it, it's an official request in and the timeline has started.
Right,
So no, it can't come up again.
okay,
The decision has to be made one way or the
Okay.
other. Yeah, it can't. It can't be just left off and then, oh, well, if they really want to, they have to come through. We can't make them go through the process again.
I'm still confused. So if we approve that for a demolition, they can say to any prospective buyer, you can either fix it up or demolish it.
That is correct.
Okay.
Well, does anybody have any reason to designate it though, or, because that's what we'd have to do, right, Mara? We either have to designate it
Yeah.
or we say it's approved, and I guess I haven't heard a reason to designate it, so.
So I get, that's my question, Mara, is kind of piggybacking off of that. Are we voting to approve the request to demolish, or are we simply voting on whether or not to designate at this point? Because it
Great
sounds
question.
like we're just voting to designate or not.
No, you are not. You are, it is a demolition request. You
Okay,
are voting yes or no that they have permission to demolish. Doesn't mean that they
Okay.
have to demolish.
yeah.
You've had ones that you've approved to demolish that have been renovated. So it's more an issue of does it have enough information to require that you want to take it through the process to designate?
All right, I got you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, it seems to me like we might not have the depth of information to designate, which is it's a little sad, but that's what we have. And it seems to me, just based on my experience, that what we have would be a little thin to pursue a designation.
That's what I see too. It's unfortunate, but you know, hopefully these people will renovate it.
That would be wonderful.
yes. And I mean, I can say I've done a lot of digging on this, and I even got to a point where, unless they went to the recorder of deeds to look for the actual deed, or I don't know, like try to investigate the family further, but I kind of kept hitting some dead ends.
We don't really have time to do that anyway. We have to tell them now. So I think we're just set.
So does anyone want to make a motion?
So yeah, sure. I move to, what would it be to demolish, to approve the
Approve.
demolish?
Approve the demolition request.
Yes, thank you.
Second,
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, next property demolition request is for 128 North Rock Hill Road. Staff has reviewed the request for demolition of the single-family dwelling at 128 North Rock Hill Road. You read the following have been addressed, and that staff recommends approval of the request to demolish the existing single-family dwelling structure without holding the request for additional review. So because I'm the chair, I just want to make this known. This house is actually directly behind my house. And I kind of found out about this one before it came through the city and was informed by a neighbor about it. So I just want to make that known. Sorry.
And I want to mention that I've done a little bit of digging around and I can't find anything about this specific house that is remarkable in any way.
I did find, obviously through the library, the building permits for when the house was built. So it's actually going to become a Century property at the end of this year, beginning of next year. And then the attached garage portion was actually added later on after it was built. And I tried to do some digging on the names of who built the actual house and who lived in it at the time of adding the garage, and I couldn't find any additional information on those names. I will say we were all kind of shocked around us because from the street, it looks in pretty good shape. Obviously, you can see in the packet the foundation condition.
Now, I do know that this particular house used to be the front yard of the house that's just to the north. At 140 North Rock Hill, they used to own the entire property all the way to Kirkham. That was their farm. And this portion was their orchard. They sold it off, of course, 100 years ago. It's been built into a number of things. I got nothing for the historic preservation. I would hope that the ARB would take into account that this is somebody else's front yard. When plans are submitted, I hope the ARB takes that into account.
Yeah, I agree. I guess my other concern is, and this doesn't really, I guess, involve us, but the large trees surrounding it. I know there's a lot of kind of century trees in that area, so that would be kind of sad to see that go.
They're required to do a tree preservation plan.
I do wish that we would have had some interior pictures of the actual living space, just to see if there were any architectural details, moldings, anything like that, that could potentially be saved and preserved. And I know in the county, just so you guys know, it said, and they say it was built in 1926, but according to the building permit, it was 1922, 23.
I'm not really a foundation expert, but are those types, I mean, it looks very serious to me. Any cracks in your foundation, but do we know if that's fixable or what kind of, what would it take?
So one thing that I'm noticing, which again, our staff review is more for the basics of, do we have any documentation at the city? One thing I noticed is it says that there's supposed to be an attached letter about the structural integrity, but I'm not actually seeing it in this copy of the packet. I might look on the online one. Well, you printed this from the online, didn't you? Yeah. So, I mean, that could be a question, because I see that it is noted that there's supposed to be an attached letter about the structural integrity. And we always state that if it is, you know, if it is an issue where they're trying to claim that it is structurally unsafe, that they are supposed to provide something signed and sealed by a structural engineer. But I don't, it says in their notes that there's supposed to be one, and I went to go look for it to reread, and I don't see one in the packet. So if you felt that you needed additional information, you do have the ability to request additional information to make a final decision, if that's the choice that you all want to make.
I also would like to see interior pictures of the house beyond the foundation. It seems a shame to miss or to lose another house that is almost a century home, but also the size and the trees and the just the way that the lot is set up with the house. It seems like that that if it's worth saving and there are things worth saving, I mean, how would we know? Because we don't really have anything but pictures of a cracked foundation. So
What would be the procedure? Can additional information be requested? Like the, verification of the structural engineering documentation and pictures of the interior?
Yes, those definitely can be requested if those are things that everyone needs to make a decision.
Let me question it, whether the foundation is repairable or not, doesn't deem it historic.
Now,
If there's nothing else there that's historic, it doesn't matter if the foundation is perfect.
that's correct. There is a checklist of items that they're supposed to provide.
Correct. So they haven't turned in all the paperwork.
So if those items are not provided, that information is something that you could request to have on the file to then definitively say that there isn't anything historic, and some of it is related to the actual historic elements of the architecture, not just the history of the property.
Sure.
Do we have, or are we able to find out, because this was sold from the property owner to a development company, and then they sold it to the current demolition request development company. Do we have a timeline of when it was sold from the homeowner to the first company?
Yes, the applicant purchased the property in January 25th. The other company bought it January 14th. And nothing went through the city between those two. We normally don't know when it changes hands until either a request comes in for permits, a request comes in to demolish, or if it changes and we get a request, we get a report from Ameren, if someone new changes the electric into their name. So those are, we don't always see when things are changing.
What was, I'm sorry, I blanked. What was the date of the first sale to the current developer? What was the timeline there?
So the original owners sold it to one company on January 14th, according to county records. And then the current company that's requesting for the demolition bought it on January 25th,
So 2 weeks later.
2 weeks later.
Okay, because I do know that the people who bought it from the original owners had the stated intent to renovate.
I mean, I personally would like to see that written report about the structural integrity if it's not, if it's listed that we're supposed to have that and it should be here and it's not here.
I'm just gonna give you all the reminder of what you're supposed to be looking at. So in determining whether or not to grant a demolition permit, you're supposed to look at the eligibility of the building for designation as an individual landmark consistent with the purposes and standards, whether the subject property can be put to a reasonably beneficial or economic use without demolishing the structure, the relationship of the building to the character of the neighborhood as an established and definable area, the structural soundness of the structure and the suitability for rehabilitation, the economic feasibility of rehabilitation or reuse of the existing structure or improvement on the property, the owner applicant's purchase of the subject property after the enactment of the provisions without making the purchase contingent upon the owner applicant first obtaining the approval. And then evidence of deterioration due to willful neglect of routine maintenance and or commencement of demolition by intentional or reckless disregard. So that's to cover when someone starts to demolish it without any permits and other things that they don't have a right to continue to demolish it. So the structural soundness is one of your deciding factors. So if you feel that you need that information and it's stated the information was there and it's not there, that is something that you can request.
So I have a question then after you read that. If we determine that the house is perfectly usable and could be renovated with, you know, say, so they don't have a report that says that there are structural problems in the basement ever, you know, they can't provide that, they can't get it in, you know, whatever. We could say, even without it being a historic designation, we could still say, no, you need to, it could be used, so no, you can't demolish it.
It gives the ability to, it's supposed to be that you're supposed to find all of those factors. It's supposed to be used if they then, if you say no, there's then an ability that those factors can be used by the city council on the appeal. So in determining whether or not to grant a demolition permit, the HPC and the city council on any appeal shall consider the following factors, which are not intended to be exclusive or limiting in arriving at a decision. And then it says, should you find that the building to be demolished does not have historical significance, we're supposed to issue the demolition permit if all other requirements of the permit process are met. If they find that the building may have historical significance under the criteria above, it shall be suspended for a period not to exceed 120 days in order to deem to preserve the structure by consulting with other groups, agencies, interested citizens, others who might have the ability to renovate the structure. So it is kind of that, it's right on that fine line. It's supposed to be that it, as a historic district, or sorry, historic commission, that it's supposed to be based on the historic. But it still has additional elements in that that are supposed to be both on the historic, that it is an older structure. It's an older structure for a certain element. And then is it really structurally unsound? And that if that is your factor, that you're saying that the only reason why you can't renovate it is it's structurally unsound, to provide that documentation.
Hey, Mara, really fast in the chat section.
Yeah, I just saw it.
Okay,
I just
good deal.
saw it.
Yep.
So hold on, I'm gonna. Sorry, I've got too many things open and I gotta figure out how to access my email. I do not know if I can access my email from here because we're in hold on. Okay, so I have it, but I can't share it because I can't, because of the room that we're in, I'm not at my computer and I can't access email to share with you. So I'm going to read it, and then I'm also gonna hold on, share the screen back again. Slide. Okay. Upright Design and Consulting, to whom it may concern, on Monday, February 14th, an engineering representative from Upright Design and Consulting visited the residence at 128 North Rock Hill. Purpose of our visit was to observe and comment on the condition of the structure. Areas that are normally inaccessible were not accessed, and no testing, destructive or non-destructive, was conducted. Therefore, we cannot warrant the overall future behavior of the building. The home at 128 North Rock Hill is a 1.5-story wood framed cottage built in 1926. The roof, floors, and walls are wood framed. The full basement has 7-foot tall, 8-inch thick, unreinforced concrete walls. The exterior grade is high on the left north side and low on the right south side, and the drainage runs forward the basement from the north. That's an awkward, I don't know how to explain that sentence, it's slightly awkward. The basement walls have numerous cracks on each wall. Previous efforts to restrain wall movement through the installation of vertical steel soldier beams have been ineffective, and the wall continue to move. In the opinion of Upright Design and Consulting, the home needs an entire foundation replacement. If raising the house and replacing foundation walls proves to be an uneconomical, then the house should be demolished. Kent McPeak, structural consultant. Anyone have any other questions?
So if this were an example of a good example of a specific architectural type, and perhaps that could be demonstrated by photographs of the interior, if there's a lot of the interior millwork that still remains and is intact. Could that be something that we should review before taking a vote? Because it looks like the original windows are in the original part of the home. Obviously, there's an addition on the back, but I just kind of wonder about the interior.
So in the past, when a demolition request has been approved, there have been some conditions where they've asked for any details to be saved in order for them to then be, reused for other projects and things like that. It could be that you can make that provision in this, and that additional photos of the existing conditions be shown so that we can identify which ones are done. But I don't know if it's necessarily something worth holding in terms of that.
Okay.
Because it's not a requirement. We cannot require them to save those elements. But many times they will.
Just as a recommendation.
Okay, does someone want to make a motion?
Make a motion that we approve this for demolition.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? So next
So moving on to old business, I know we've discussed in the past the projects we've discussed for the 2022 year now, of doing more research on the Joy Built homes and Lustron homes. You know, we kind of discussed that a little bit last month's meeting, even though we were Zoom. I personally haven't done too much research towards those because I was still looking into the 713. So I don't know if anybody has anything to add. Any new thoughts?
Everyone's really quiet tonight. So a couple options I think we talked about last time was to start reaching out to other groups to see if you could get other people into your subcommittee. So maybe that's something that's done between now and the next meeting, is to get additional onto the subcommittee for this one and be able to figure out better ways to share all the data. I initially had thought we could do stuff through our OneDrive, but it seems like it's been set up now in a way that I can't share it the way I thought I could. So I can't share it to the group overall. So we've got to figure out some other potential options, or that I ask them how best we can do the sharing. Any other thoughts?
I do want to say I tried to figure out how to move what I've amassed to the OneDrive, and of course not. I can't seem to access it. I don't know if that's a problem at my end.
No, it's not a problem at your end. There were things that changed with how I gave permission to multiple people to access it, and then it changed somehow. So I do not have the ability. It requires a password now. It seems to be that I can send it on a one-time basis to someone to access files, but I can't keep it as a permanent open to all of you that are giving you access. Okay. So we have to figure out what those options are. Sorry. Weird. Oh, there it is. Okay.
I know that is on my radar now to get some subcommittee people. I kind of went down a rabbit hole with some of the demo requests we had. Does anybody have anything else to add regarding our projects, or should we continue on trying to figure out how to share information and create subcommittees and discuss it again at our next meeting?
Were there any particular individuals or groups that we could identify to reach out to as subcommittee members, potential subcommittee members, like maybe some of the homeowners who were really into their house?
Yeah.
You're gonna have to. I'm just trying to think if there's some things we can maybe brainstorm about people who might be interested in participating.
Yeah, I know specifically on Facebook, there is a group, Webster Grove Century Homeowners. So I think that's a place to start. Like you said, there's a lot of people who are very interested in researching their home on that page. And I think, if we kind of open this opportunity to them, I think we can probably get some people from there.
There's also the possibility, and we've done this before with the Lustrons, is that we could send a series of letters to all those who have been found on the list as having a permit that was a Joy Built, And it might be that there are residents that, don't know about that, who might want to be involved about their own homes. So that's another option. It's not as easy to do because we'd have to send letters. But we do have the ability that we could send letters if you wanted to.
That seems to me to be an obvious starting place, is to contact current owners of these buildings to see who would be interested in pursuing whatever we come up with.
So I probably need someone to draft what you want to say, what you are, thinking that you want to do in terms of, we've talked about a walk or a designation. Designation is going to be a little harder because they're so scattered, but maybe thinking about a walk and doing additional research on it. So thinking that piece through would be something that would be important to have in that letter. And if I have what that designation, what that information is, we can merge mailing lists and be able to send letters out. So if someone wanted to take on, what do you want to say in that letter? Maybe bring that to the next meeting so that you all are in agreement that that is what you want it to say to the residents, and then be able to move forward on that.
And in the meantime, try to recruit for a subcommittee.
And still try to recruit for subcommittee, correct?
I would think we could do that through the Facebook page, the Century Homes page.
Yeah, I just kind of thought, because I think a lot of people hear commission, if you're not part of that, you can't really help with projects. So I think if we get it out there that a subcommittee you can definitely be a part of to help with the research, I think we could find some interested people.
People may have already researched their own home and may have some good information about the background of their homes that could contribute to the overall project. That might be something we could add to the letter, perhaps.
Does anybody have anything else to add? Okay.
And I left on the other one, which we hadn't really, we were also sort of talking about anyone else on a subcommittee potentially, what the next steps would be, and a possible walk or a possible designation.
Yeah, I guess for this, I think it would be good to contact the owners, because doing we could certainly do the designation fairly easily, national even, and because it's been done so much. Or some of the only, Missouri's one of the only states that doesn't have one, so it'd be kind of nice to do it. You said you had someone who had contacted you, like from Brentwood or something?
That's correct.
That would be good to get that information. And you said there had been a letter written before?
There was a letter that I found in some of the old files, so I could send that on to you.
Oh, that would be great.
Could be used as like a base to work off of.
So we can see if anybody is even okay with their house being designated or whatever,
Mara, did you send us this list?
I don't think I sent you
Can
this
you
list.
send us
Yep,
this list?
yep,
Yeah, that would be great.
yes. I can actually send the list, and I'll find the letter that was sent
That'd be
before
great.
and send both of those out to the whole commission. So I think that's two sets of next steps. We'll use the spreadsheet to try to figure out addresses. Someone will work on a letter for the Joy Built. Contact's going to be made on the Facebook page for Joy Built. For the Lestron, I'll send the letter out and the list of the current Lestrons. And so maybe for next month, we can have draft letters to review for both of them. And then we should have lists that we'll
Great.
have for both of them.
Can I ask, at this moment of any possible requests coming on next month's agenda?
Oh, for demo? The deadline hasn't hit yet.
Okay.
Yeah, deadline has not hit yet. I don't think there's any, I was trying to think of any that, we've been getting a lot of calls about different things, but most of them have been for vacant lots that are very like, little tiny vacant lots that have been sitting forever. I've been getting a lot of calls on those, but not necessarily on demolitions. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, there is one. Edgar Court, if I'm remembering correctly. There is one that they were going to do an addition on the house. And I think that they are going to ask for it to be demolished. And I want to say it's maybe from the 50s or 60s. I'd have to go back and look. It's more than 50 years old. It's not necessarily mid-century modern. But there is one that they had some plans in to do an addition. And structurally, things aren't working the way they wanted them to work. And so I think they're going to do that as a demo. But I've not seen any submission for it yet. So there may be one. One thing I forgot to ask all of you, and it's a little too late already for this meeting. There is a way to put closed captioning on, and I don't know how well you all are hearing all of us. For future meetings, would you like me to make sure to turn the closed captioning on? It's a little wonky, but it works sometimes. Does anyone care?
I mean, I can hear everybody fine, personally.
I just wanted to make sure they could all hear us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I bring one more thing up that I know you sent to us in an email and I forgot until now?
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned training.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, so there are a number of things that are shared by the state of Missouri for sort of additional training. Some of them are things where you can do it on your own. And there are others that we might be able to access and do during a regular meeting. So I will continue, usually what I do is I try to share when I see one. So like there was one on Lust-Run homes a couple of years ago that I sent to the commission as a, hey, you can attend this, webinar or whatever it was. We do have to track and have some training that we do have to show and prove to the state of Missouri that we've done. So I will continue to provide additional things as I see them. I think I sent one recently, which is probably what you were talking about.
So when you say tracking, does it have to be like we register for a webinar and then watch it? Is that how it's tracked? Or-
It's more that we just have to write in our report yearly to them what training we've provided, either for you as a whole or that individual members have attended.
And on what you sent out, I just kind of went on and scrolled through there, and I did watch the one about designing infill structures for historic districts, just because I thought it'd be relevant, especially like for ARB as well as all of us. And it really was pretty interesting. So how would I go about documenting that to y'all?
Yeah, just send it to me and
Okay.
and then what we're gonna try to do is they've given us a report that we put it in, and what I'll probably do is just start a new folder and just keep track of ones that have been watched.
Okay.
So yeah, as long as we can just provide and show that we've given that training either as an overall group or brought someone in, like if we want to bring someone in to talk about some elements, there's those opportunities too.
Sorry. Sorry. So I do have a question that when you say that it's basically like self-reporting, right?
Mhm.
If we did some other training of sorts of watched our own webinar, we can report that to you.
Yes, most definitely. Doesn't have to be the ones that they've provided. It just happens that they've been providing us some links. But yes,
Okay.
anything that you've attended, we can put that on there.
Okay.
And it's, yeah.
Then actually, so I could give you a couple of things that I've done that were, for licensure that are
Yeah.
historic preservation oriented. Does that count?
That
Okay.
counts. Yep, that's great.
Does anybody have anything else to add?
And so I'm gonna just really quick, I know, and I know Megan is putting her hand up. This isn't a public meeting, it's not a public hearing, but she is on and asking a question, so I'm just gonna let her go ahead and ask a question. So Megan, we're putting you over and allowing you to speak. What was your question?
Sorry, I wasn't trying to interrupt. I put a question in the chat 20 or 30 minutes ago, and I don't think anyone saw it.
Okay, so what was your question?
Was the 713 Hurst Greenhouse declared structurally unsound?
It was not declared structurally unsound, but it was given permission for if someone does wish to demolish, they're not moving forward with a designation at this time.
So any home in Webster Groves can be torn down as long as it's not of historic significance.
No, I'm not going to say that specifically. Each house is looked at individually under a series of factors and provide information with an application.
We had a lot of photos of the other house on the interior where we did not of this house.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw those photos on the materials that were posted on Facebook, and a lot of it just looked like the pictures were taken to make it look as bad as possible, showing dirt and clutter. And I didn't see a lot of structural things. And they mentioned, oh my God, there are cracks in the plaster. Well, I think all houses in Webster Groves have cracks in the plaster.
So it's not, if you are asking to demolish it because of structural reasons, you are required to provide a structural report. If you're asking to demolish it just because you want to demolish it, you don't have to provide a structural report. So it is not related necessarily. There are structural unsoundness, but this is supposed to be finding that it is not able to be renovated, that it is has a whole series of elements related to it. Now, the permission for demolition is not necessarily a requirement that it get demolished. It gives that permission. And so we have had ones in the past that have been given permission to demolish and have still renovated.
Okay. The reason I'm so curious about it is I own 725, the next door neighbor, the twin house.
Oh, okay. So did you hear the early discussion? Because we were talking about trying to nominate them as a pair and went through some of the history. But there really just wasn't enough to kind of pull it all together for the nomination without additional research.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there was anything special about the family. Yeah, I wasn't looking for historic designation or anything. I'm just curious about the whole process, because when we bought the house in 1995, it had been renovated by a development company, and I think our house was probably in as bad a shape or worse as 713. And they managed to renovate it. I just hate seeing houses torn down.
It is our understanding that there is currently someone who plans to renovate it, not demolish it at this time, but I can't guarantee that that's going to continue to stay in that status.
Hopefully so. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Great. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Nope. All right, we'll see you guys next month.
I
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.